Hello, I am so happy to have Kelsey here today, Kelsey Brogna. We have known each other for over 20 years. We actually took dance class together as children and followed each other online and just through mutual friends for years ever since then. And I'm so excited to have you on. I'll have you introduce yourself in a second. But today we're going to talk about the courage to leave, come out, and start over. And you have a really beautiful personal story that actually brought you back to dance and really shining your light. So yeah, introduce yourself. Tell us what you're here to talk about and what you're excited to share.
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me. And yes, it's been about 20 years since we've known each other as little girls to teens in dancing school. So thank you for having me today. Um, my story takes place kind of over my lifespan, but within the last 2.5 years has really taken a turn and really changed. My entire life, at the age of starting at 36, now I'm 38. But to kind of give you some context, when I was around the age of 14, and even before then, I had some curious moments with female partners, and I was in a space where that piece of me was always trying to figure out what felt good to me or how to explore or how to kind of understand what was happening for me internally. When I was a freshman in high school, I actually started my first real relationship with a girl. We were together for a year. And if you would have asked me then, I would have said, I am a lesbian and this is my path. Um, you know, I'm 14. I'm very impressionable. Insert society, insert family, insert, what does this look like to have a family? What does this look like for me? And so I had a bit of a heartbreak in this relationship. And from that point on, I just moved into a space of dating men, um, boys at the
Okay.
time.
Yeah.
And so that is kind of what was happening for me throughout from, the age of 16 to when I just left my marriage at 36. I find that now when I reflect, there was a lot of discomfort for me in this. Um, I didn't feel fully like myself. I think that I just did what I thought I was supposed to do, which led me to meeting my now ex-husband. We were together for 15 years. Um, we have two beautiful boys together who
Mhm.
are 6 and 9. And, I got to a point where I slowly just started losing who I was in my marriage, and I didn't even honestly realize it. I started becoming an extension of my ex-husband and not really like being who I wanted to be or who I don't even think I knew who I was at that point.
Mm.
Um,
And
fast
how old
forward,
were you when you got married?
I was 28 when I got
Okay.
married. And at that point, I thought, I want the husband and the house and the kids and the white picket fence and the safety. Um, and I got it, all of it. And
Yeah.
it took me to get to that point to say, I have everything I wanted and I'm unhappy. I am unfulfilled and
Yeah.
something feels wrong. And
Right.
so
So like, there's just so many big things there, so I wanna pause and dissect for a minute, and then we can get back to that moment. So, when you had a heartbreak at what was it, age 14, or did you say 16, early on, um, and then you kind of shifted away from going towards women, and then you just dated men ever since then, is that right? So why do you think you suppressed that part of yourself at that moment? Did you just think that was what you were supposed to do and that was you were trying something different? Like, why do you think you kept going in that direction, then ended up actually marrying a man?
I think that I felt so awful at the age of 14 in that heartbreak. I, for the first time in my life, self-harmed.
Oh,
I, for the first time in my life, went to therapy. I just knew I never wanted to feel that way again. I
oh,
think
yeah.
that my family wasn't as supportive as I would have thought. Um, they were more on the mindset of you're young, you don't know what you want. And I
Yeah.
was like, well, I guess I don't. Right. I guess like I never want to be in this position again. So let me just go to a space where I don't feel this vulnerable and
Yeah,
I
you were looking
feel
for
safe.
safety.
Right.
Yes. Okay. So, and then fast forward to you're married, everything seemed like you got what you wanted. Like I've been following you on Facebook for years and I saw your wedding photos. So I was like, "Oh my gosh, what a fairy tale." The dress, the seemingly, perfect love story, and then your two boys and like the picture perfect situation, to anyone looking in externally. But then that sense of safety was false, right? Because you actually weren't coming from a place that expressed your true self and you said you lost your identity. So when was it in the marriage when you first started realizing like, "Oh, I actually am lost and I need to change something."
So I think that me and my ex had very different upbringings. I think that, I come from divorced parents. I come from having a stepmom. I come from, different partners in my parents' life. Whereas my ex husband came from a very stable, family oriented space. I think that I saw that and was attracted to that. I think I saw
Uh-huh.
safety. I
Yeah.
started becoming, he was very invested in church. So I was invested in church. Um, a lot of a lot of our life was, I moved north of Boston and I am from south of Boston. I became friends with
Right.
his friends. My life was his life. And I think
Yeah.
as I started doing those little things, I started suppressing things about myself. And, I'm a free spirit. I am full of life. And I
Mhm.
think I started dimming my light to become what he wanted in a partner without
Mm.
even realizing it. And
Right.
so it just makes you think when you stop for a second, right? Like my life looked perfect on the outside, right? Like I even believed it. Okay.
Yeah.
But I was robotic. I didn't feel
Oh.
anything. Everything was like I had to always be busy, always be planning, always
Oh,
be
wow.
doing something. So I wasn't still. And when I
Ooh,
became
I just got chills.
still, I was able to see what was happening for me and say, wait a second, how did I get here?
Yeah. So in the moments that led up to you actually bringing this up with him and changing your entire life, asking yourself, "How did I get here?" And do you remember specific moments where you were like overwhelmed or scared or like super stressed? Like, did you reach a point where you were like, "This isn't sustainable for me, for my mental health, for my life?"
Yeah, so it's complex because I think throughout a lot of our marriage, sex was a hard piece for us, and I think that I hated it, and I thought, "Oh, I'm just a tired mom. I work full time. I don't have the energy," right? But
Yeah.
it was, like, really hard for me, and so it was either avoided or I would just drink and
Oh,
be able to do whatever.
yeah.
Um, I then became friends with these other moms and girls in my neighborhood. And, we got to be really close. We'd have girls' nights and we would share a lot. So I would hear about other marriages, the good, the bad, the ugly. Um, and it made me say, like, wait a second, you like want your husbands? Like things like that. Like it made me stop and go, what is happening for me? Um,
Oh,
and I think that, I voiced some of these things to him. I'm not happy. I'm not feeling like alive. And, the way that this was interpreted was just not what I was looking for.
yeah.
I ended up in my girl group meeting one of my friends, Caitlin, who is now my partner,
Mhm.
um, who was, she'd been a lesbian her whole life. And I was always so intrigued by her and I couldn't understand why. And I always wanted to like talk to her and hang out with her and hear her perspective. And when we started hanging out more, I had like really confusing feelings, right? Like we were good friends, but I had like this, we'd work out together in a group and I was almost like a little nervous. And I'm like, why am I
Oh,
nervous with my friend? And so
yeah.
I voiced these things to my now ex-husband, of like, these are feelings that I'm feeling. Like I will say, when I left my marriage, I was very transparent with him in terms of what was happening for me. And while the conversations were awful and
Yeah.
hard, I
Yeah.
felt like instant relief in getting these things out. Um,
That's huge that you were so open. And because I think a lot of people would hold that in and that would just really negatively affect them in a lot of ways. And so that's so great that you had kind of that cathartic release. And even though it was still a very difficult conversation, I'm sure, or multiple conversations, because you have a family, you've built something together for years, you have children that are affected, right? So I'm sure that was difficult for both of you. Um, so I would just say, congratulate yourself for being open and transparent.
Thank you. It got to the point where honestly, me and my ex were having more open conversations in the breakdown of our marriage than we ever did our whole relationship. We were very
Wow.
surface level,
Okay.
um, and we weren't deep. It was almost like we were friends in a marriage.
Oh,
And,
okay.
I started to see that a lot more as time went on, where I'm like, we might care for each other, but I'm wondering if we actually like the person that each other is.
Mm,
And
yeah,
so, you
on that
know,
deeper level.
right, right. And so for me, and I'm saying this as just so matter of fact, like, oh, and then I said these big things to him where, you know, I went back to self-harming.
Oh,
I had days where I had to call friends to say like, I don't want to live anymore. I just want this to be over. It is so hard to
oh
be
my
in a
god.
space where you feel like you don't I wanted to crawl out of my skin. I wanted to flee, but I
Mm,
am a mom
yeah,
and financially, I can't just leave. There were
right.
so many things that had to be discussed and worked through and all of these things, and I struggled in that. And so I think people on the outside were like, "Wow, she's so brave and bold. She spoke her truth and she left her marriage and now she's like in bliss having this love story."
Yeah,
But there was a lot of dark, dark days of, like, to the
yeah,
point where my therapist's like, "Here's my cell phone number." It
yeah,
was it
yeah.
was bad, and I don't
Mm.
wanna sugarcoat that part. I think a
And
lot of
that's
people
really
would be
important.
surprised.
That's really important for you to say that because I think for anyone listening, we're all human, and especially as women, there's a lot of and as a mother, there's just so many layers of the difficulties and the dark moments, and that's normal, especially when you're making such a big change and reconfiguring and, reclaiming your entire identity. That's huge, right? And so, um, I think it's really important for you to honestly mention those it wasn't easy. It wasn't just like flip of a switch and you're out, right? So, um, you were talking about kind of the logistics, right? Because you're with someone, there's the financial elements. There's you can't just up and flee like you said. There's responsibilities. So you said you leaned on your therapist and friends. How did you actually was it like a slow process where you rebuilt your life and made the moves you needed to make? Or, like, how what was your support system like, and how did you emerge from that dark place?
Yeah, I think a lot of the darkness came from, like, trying to communicate what was happening to me to my ex and not being heard, and I felt like my whole marriage I wasn't
Yeah.
heard, and
Oh,
so
that's so frustrating.
it was, like, 6 months of me trying to say I want to separate and not being heard to a point where I just said broke down and said, "I surrender. Like, I will just stay because I don't you are
Oh
not
my
hearing me, and I, like, can't do this anymore." Like, I am like, my insides just feel miserable, and it took that point for him to go, "Oh,
like,
okay,
this
like,
is
I
true.
need to listen
Yeah.
to you."
Yeah.
And so then we did separate for a while. I was living under the same roof, which
Mm,
was really hard. We had like different schedules with the kids. We explained
okay.
to the kids that, we were better as friends and that we
Yeah.
didn't hate each other or anything like that. But like,
Yeah.
you don't live with your friends. So at some point,
Right.
mommy is going to move out. I thought that that was the best decision in our situation.
Yeah.
Um, but I think through that, I leaned on a lot of people. I leaned on Caitlin a lot. I think
Yes.
Caitlin, became such a safe space so quickly for me.
Yeah.
Um, she was able to see me in a way I've never been seen before for, like, actually who I am and not she didn't have anything to say about it, right? I showed up who I was, and she accepted and loved me through that, as my
Yes.
friend to start.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um and I think that was the core. I think that,
Yeah.
with my kids, it was hard because you're like, I'm a child of divorce, and I told myself I will never get divorced. Like, I will do everything I can to never get divorced. But at the same time, my kids weren't seeing like what real love to look like. They were
Yeah.
seeing like some transactional, um, functional relationship. And like, I don't want that for them. I want them to
Right.
see their
Right.
mom happy. I want them to see their dad happy, right? Like, I'm not
Yeah.
giving him things either. Like, let's just call it for what it is. And
Yeah.
I think that now my kids are seeing, like, oh, wow, my mom, like, dances in the kitchen and she's like crying
Yes.
tears of joy and she's
Joy.
happy and she's more present and she feels things and I talk to my kids a lot more. I feel like I was
Really?
very like, coddling and now I'm like, hey,
Oh,
what are you feeling? How can we
yeah.
talk through it, change it? Um, because I want
That's
them to
awesome.
feel all the things because I didn't until
Yeah.
2 years ago.
And, this may sound cliche, but I really think the experiences that we go through, however hard they are, they happen for some reason. And so you saw the flip side of when you didn't feel your feelings and express your truth. And you realize that's not the example I want to set for my kids. Now you've been through it, you understand, and you're at that next level of kind of your frequency and your emotional intelligence. And so now you can share that beauty with your boys and
Mhm.
have just open, real conversations. And that's like the best gift I think you could give to your children. So that's
I
huge.
agree. Yeah, I think that and I didn't they're young, so yes, I sugarcoated things, but I did say, like, "Mommy's sad today. Mommy's having a hard day," right? And
Yeah.
I want them to see that it's not all great sometimes, and they can also
Yeah.
have hard days, and,
Hmm.
um, I think, I have 2 boys, and so I want to express to them that they can also feel emotions, and how to support how to show support, how to get support when they need it. So the transition's been, it hasn't been so easy for them, but it's definitely something where I think that they're getting a more whole mom.
Yeah. And that's the outcome you want. And it starts with yourself. And so you
Mhm.
took care of yourself in order to be that whole mom. And from there, so coming back to, you started to feel seen by specifically Caitlin, who was your friend at first, and then it became romantic. And you realize, oh, that's what was missing. I wasn't seen for just myself and accepted fully.
Mhm.
Um, and, in my work with own person, I help with personal brands, but it's also, there's that emotional layer of helping women who are new business owners or starting their own thing come from a place that's true so that they're not afraid to share and show and be seen as their authentic selves in their brands. So I
Mhm.
can just really relate to that. And I think it's a very relatable story for people in any walk of life. So you started to feel different and you had kind of a fresh chapter in your life, and then you start dancing again. So can you tell me and just anyone listening about that journey back to really feeling alive? Because you were saying you were robotic, you couldn't feel anything. But then I see your dance videos and it's like, boom, like there you are. There's the girl I remember who was the star of her dance. No joke, the star of her dances. And I always saw your gift. So how did you come back to that point?
So I think it took a while. I think that I slowly started to ask myself, like, who was I before this? And so I see, like, all over social media that once women are getting into their late 30s, early 40s, they're like, who was my 16-year-old self? And that's like who they're truly trying to embody. And so I had a lot of support through it. I feel like, I did a lot of scary things, right? Like I left my marriage, I spoke my truth, I came out. But I feel like I never came back to my body as much.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that I had a lot of like trauma around my body. I wanted to hide my body. I just didn't feel comfortable in my body. I think that fast forward being with a woman has had me come back to my body and feel safe and secure, but I
Yeah.
didn't exude confidence.
Mm,
I think that, I wanted something more for myself. I wanted to be in a safe space. So I found a dance studio that's actually um, queer owned, women owned
nice.
in my city in Peabody. So shout out to Seacoast Stilettos.
I wanna
And
try it,
you
honestly.
should, it is
I'm considering
amazing.
it's so
The
empowering.
community yeah, the community is, like, so inclusive, so welcoming,
Love it.
come as you are, and I think that we didn't grow up in that dance environment. We grew up in, it was fun and it was great, but it was strict, and
Yeah.
it was, pressure, and I think that you go in and, they're doing ballet and they're in whatever they wanna wear and doing things like that,
Yeah.
and, the first class I took was a heels class, which we definitely did not grow up doing heels dancing,
Right.
um, and it made
We had
me
the
feel
character heels, but that was about it.
definitely not stilettos,
No.
um, it made me feel like honestly, at first a little funny, like, I wanted to feel sexy and I was like,
Yeah.
"Wait, can I? Should I?" And now I feel more confident and sexy and, like, I just did my first, like, performance. They do a showcase in March, and it was my
Yeah.
first time on a stage since I was 18,
Yeah.
and I loved it. Like, such a thrill, such a high. I felt so
Yes.
confident. I feel like you know, when you're younger, you care a lot about what people think, and you're like, I don't want to look a certain way. I want to, show up in this space in a certain manner. And as you get older, especially for me, trying to, come do big things at an age that I'm at, I don't care what people think. And
Do hard
so
things.
yes. And so having that energy on stage of just being like, whatever, I don't care who sees me, who thinks what they think is like so freeing.
Yeah.
Um, and definitely
Yeah.
like such a great experience coming back to dance in that.
That's incredible. Just to, like, screw the judgment, screw whatever I'm telling myself about what people will think or who cares? It's for
Right.
you. And like, it's just, like you said, freeing and like to feel sexy again and to feel like you're in your body and present. That's the best thing in the whole world, I think.
Right.
That's just such a beautiful thing for you. I'm very, very happy to see you thriving in that way.
Thank you. And I think, too, it's like for me. It's not for
Yes.
anyone else. And, I have, even with like, outside of dance and my like own personal style, I feel like a lot of women dress for the male gaze, and I had to like deconstruct that and dress for
Oh,
myself. So some days I'm in, you know, a tight dress, and then some days I'm in sweats and a hoodie and sneaks, and like I
yes.
still feel good and confident. And I always have my hoops on though. That's something I don't give away.
Yes, it's your signature. I love
Um but yeah, I think just like coming back to yourself in any way you can really like makes you just be like, I don't care. I'm going to be me. And it takes work, but it is so worth
it.
it
Yeah.
in the end.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, in terms of it taking work, and I'm just curious, you say like some days you wear a cute sweatsuit, some days you wear like a sexy dress, but you're still feeling like you. So what was the work that you did to be able to understand how that feels and to just kind of own it and not care?
So I think when I look back, I always dressed for my situation or who I would be around, right? I'd never dress like for
Oh.
myself. So I'd be like, oh, I'm going out with this group of girls. They kind of dress like this. So I'm going to dress like this. I think when I
Mm,
started like shaving the layers of like my protective gear, I was like, how do I like what do I feel like today? Right? Like what do I want to
mm,
embody? I think I cared a lot about what people thought of me versus just showing up as my authentic self. I think that given the space I'm at in life, I have had the space to do that, is just show up and be who I want. And if people don't like that, then they don't have to be in my space. I think that I have, like,
mhm.
condensed my circles, and just I know my worth now. And,
Yes. I'm
I
working
think
on this as well.
yeah,
A lot of people are. Understanding the worth is where it really starts, I think.
right, right. And I think honestly, like, I keep coming back to Caitlin, but she made me feel so beautiful just
Hmm.
existing. And I think that I never thought I was beautiful or never thought I was confident or sexy or um, just like good as I am. And I think she saw me in a way that I'd never been seen. And so I just kept hearing these things out of genuine, you know, love for me. And I was like, wait a second. I am like beautiful. I am
Yeah.
sexy and I can be confident. And I think now I actually believe those things about myself, which is the difference, right?
Oh,
Like you
well,
can hear
yeah,
them, but when you can
yeah.
sit in them and say, oh, okay, like I do feel pretty today and feel good in that, like that's the shift.
I have chills. Like, that's so important because I think there's just so many people, and I'm so glad you found someone like that and you understand how that feels. And I'm very lucky as well. My husband makes me feel that way, and he has since we met. And but I've been in relationships where that was not the case. And I think there's a lot of people that they don't know that exists. Where they're
Right.
just, like, people pleasing, and I have done it, whether it's friends or, trying to fit in or just saying what you think you need to say to advance in work or with your romantic partner, whatever it is. But when you're not feeling like you're worthy, it's for you, then it's not going to actually bring you the outcomes that matter and that will get you to the life you really dream of,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that shift that you spoke of, where it's like you start believing it, um, that's extremely powerful, and that's how you really have that inner like you have that magnetism from inside and outward, and then things just kind of start falling into place, right, from there.
Mhm, mhm. And there were things that Caitlin could see that I didn't see, so, like, I would always apologize for, like, anything, and she'd be like, why are you saying what do you have to be sorry for? Or like I would people please and she'd be like, you don't have to people please me. Like, and these were
Good.
just like safety and defaults for myself.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize I was doing it half the time. And then she's like, Stop apologizing. You have nothing to be sorry about."
I think a lot of people do that, even like it's learned far back, like from childhood. And
Hmm.
you're just trying to, you think there's a default, like you think that's what you need to do.
Right.
And I've done that. I've actually caught myself like, why am I apologizing? Like, I don't need to open with I'm sorry,
Yeah.
so that's cool that she called you out in that way, in a
Yeah.
kind and loving way, called you out.
Right.
I think sometimes we need that.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, and so for someone that maybe is in a similar situation or a totally different situation, but they're feeling like how, like you said, how did I get here? And reevaluating everything, what would you say and like what advice would you give just to make the little steps towards a more fulfilling path and just feeling like yourself again? Is
Mhm.
there like a small step that you would urge someone to start with?
So I was heavy in therapy. I think that my therapist taught me about boundaries, which I
Mhm.
didn't even know how to set one. And so I think boundaries are really important when you're feeling a certain way and seeing how the person you're setting a boundary for respects it and seeing how they show up in that space. I think, I also got the tools in therapy to um, understand what I was actually trying to communicate and also setting boundaries where like conversations were hard for me. And I think I never knew that I could walk away from a conversation if it didn't feel good. And so
Yeah,
I would be in conversations to leave my marriage, and a lot of times I would just take it and, like, it was like gay shaming and a lot
right.
of things that were not okay, and I would just take it. And then my therapist was like, "You have the power to decide how you show up in that conversation. So if it doesn't feel good and it's not getting to a solution, walk away. And the
Yeah.
conversation, come back to it at a different time." I didn't
Yes.
realize I had the power to do that. And so I think
Yeah.
for anyone that's in a tough situation, I think conversations are, your communication is key. I think
Yep.
that someone can't understand what you're feeling if you're not communicating it, but also having boundaries around how you'll communicate. I had to be I had to be a black and white communicator. I couldn't put emotion into it because
Mm,
my points were not heard. So I had to
okay.
be very strategic on how I communicated my words. So I think honestly, communication and boundary setting is like an initial step. Um, and just having time with yourself, like, and friends. For me, like, I don't know if I would actually be here today if I didn't have the friends that I had. My next door neighbor, I would call her and say, I need to come over because like I'm scared for myself.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and so I think support is huge. I joined like a late blooming Facebook group. It's like the woman is based out of Australia, but it has like women that have come out later in life across the globe.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
this was a space where I had strangers that were like, I will talk to you about anything. Like, this is how I left. Or so I'm
Mm,
a advocate for like diving into communities and seeing what you can find. And like, it might be a
yeah,
stranger or, I listened to podcasts. I read books. I would say the book Untamed actually changed my life.
really.
Yeah, it's by Glennon Doyle. It is
Mhm.
amazing. She says at a certain point, like, a snake can never go back into its skin, and like a butterfly can never go back into their cocoon. Like, once you emerge and realize something about yourself, like, you will never go backwards. And that was
Yes.
true for me. Like, even if I wanted to force my marriage to work, like, I couldn't. I had
Yeah.
unveiled all these things about myself, and like I was just moving forward.
Wow. Just mic drop because it's huge. Like, I can't even put into words how powerful what you did is. And I think it's great advice to join communities and, like, find the words in the right book, in the right friend. And we're not in it alone. I think that's the message. You're not alone, even when it feels like I don't know what to do or I can't even get up.
Right,
Um,
right.
there's
A
someone to
lot of
hold your
those days. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, well, this has been incredible. I have one more question, I think, before we end.
Yes.
Um, what are you looking forward to now, where you're at? What are you excited about in just your life, in anything that you're dreaming of in the future?
Yeah, so I'm excited about where I am now. And that's, me and my girlfriend live together. We have my two boys, her daughter, so we're actively blending a family, which has been great.
Yeah.
Um I'm excited for our future. I still believe that marriage is my end goal. Like, I do want to be married. I do want this space of a partner forever. I know that what I have found in Caitlin is, like, honestly, she completes me, and
Oh, that's the
I
best.
have never felt such, like, a deep connection with someone to the point where, I don't know, it's, like, euphoric, and,
Wow.
I think it's, like, what I've been missing, and so I'm just really excited to, like, live life in a space that feels good for me, for my kids,
Mm.
for me and Caitlin, and just, live the second half of my life and be free and have fun and
Yes.
yeah, have love.
Ah, beautiful. Yes, I'm excited for you. And thank you for sharing all of this because it's a vulnerable story, but I think it's absolutely beautiful. And congratulations. You should feel so good. And you have so much ahead of you. Like you have this whole new phase. So I think it's going to be great.
Thank you
But
so
yeah,
much for having me and letting me tell my story.
of course. And it was good to just catch up with you because it had been a long time.
Too
So
long. Yes,
too
I
long.
agree.
But we'll keep in touch and I'll hopefully get my dancing heels on and join
Yes,
you because
always
fun.
down to have a partner.
Yay. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Take
Thank you,
care.
Megan. Bye.